if they had done as Guardians of the Galaxy and then done the Jane Foster thing, as Guardians of the Galaxy could have been considered a Natalie Portmanteau.
Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds.
Are they in the proper approach pattern for today?
Negative.
Hold the weapon! Now! Charge the lightning field.
Blast off.
Blastar.
Who's going to be cast as Blastar?
Nathan Fillion.
Why not?
Why? And honestly, why not? Why the not? I don't know.
Kid.
Maybe just get to the guy that played Belky in Perfect Strangers. Why not?
No, we're going to cast actual Balky Bartakamus to be Blastar.
Bronson Pinchot?
Yeah. Yep, you got it in one.
And I always confused him with Jurgen Pronschau, which is the horse of a different color. I'll tell you what, In the Mouth of Madness would have been a way different movie if it was Bronson Pinchot.
Aquel.
Das Boot would have been really interesting.
Welcome to Dispatch Ajax.
Hey, this is our show.
Yeah, this is the show. I'm Jake, and this is my best bud.
Uh-huh.
No, say your name.
Oh, I'm skipping.
Yeah. No, say it. Say it where they can hear it.
Say my
say
name,
it right now.
Bastion. Moonchild.
He is Moonchild.
Moon Unit. I'm a Zappa kid, as it turns out. This is Ahmet.
You're a Moonanite, that's what you are.
What are we talking about?
Well,
castings.
Yep, we're talking about... this episode is supposed to be about comic book movie casting.
Mm-hmm.
Something that we are all very much into, I guess, at this point in our lives, since superhero films dominate everything. All of Hollywood and the box office.
And I think it's definitely in the wheelhouse of people like you and I specifically, not just because of who we are, but because of how old we are. We watched the evolution of the comic book film sort of take over Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
This is things we really cared about and still do care about. It's just we get it so often now that it's like, well, okay, all right, I guess. But when it's good, it's good. When they nail it, they nail it. We can also get into like audio casting too. You know, Batman the Animated Series, not Shirley Walker, but Andrea
Day O'Connor.
What's her name? Andrea Day O'Connor, that person that doesn't exist. Some little girl in Ohio is like, it's me.
Daddy, they were talking about me.
Yeah, because I'm sure she's listening to this.
We're going to tag her in this, so she'll... Yeah, I'd say in 1988 probably is when the shitfittery of comic book movie casting began. For that is when Michael Keaton was cast as Batman, and Jack Nicholson was cast as Joker. So each of those were put in their roles for different reasons. Some of it was talent, some working relationships, some studio pressure. But either way, both of those actors ended up working out smashingly.
Mm-hmm.
They both defined those characters for a new generation and truly opened up the wings of the superhero genre, which, since then, has soared to ever greater heights, some dips notwithstanding. Thankfully, at the time, there was no real or widely available internet, let alone podcasts like these dipshits have.
There are other guys in the room.
Yeah. It's those guys. I don't like them. Their show sucks. Your show sucks!
Sorry.
Yeah, they know. Because if there had been, there's a good chance that fan revolt might have scuppered the whole process before it could have emerged from the shadows. Imagine the Snyder Cut fanshists, but cranked up to 11. There was legitimate skepticism and apocalyptic anger when the news of Michael Keaton being cast as Batman broke. So there have been a ton of people up for this role. I mean, this was like a hot new role in Hollywood. People like Mel Gibson, Kevin Costner, Tom Selleck, I mean, even Pierce Brosnan. A lot of like big names really could have commanded the screen.
You know, the sad part about the Pierce Brosnan thing is he still couldn't get out of his Remington Steele contract. That's the only reason he wasn't Bond and Batman. Think about how shitty that is for you.
So Remington Steele ended in 1987.
But they would have casted Batman 89 and...
Well, no, they casted in 88.
Okay.
So,
all right.
Yeah, production didn't start on that till 88. They had been working on different things with different directors and producers before that.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, he had read the script.
I would have liked to have seen what he would have done with that, honestly.
He didn't get it, and that it's a guy running around in his pajamas, and he thought it was kind of dumb, and he didn't think that he could make this work. But then after the movie came out and was a huge success, he was like, I was so wrong, and it completely worked, and they knew what they were doing.
No, so it was like Sean Connery in The Matrix.
Yes, yeah. Or Will Smith, it was like, I read it, I didn't get it at all.
Boy, would that have been a weird alternate universe where we have Sean Connery as Morpheus and Will Smith as...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, here's the quote. I went and met with Tim Burton for the role of Batman, but I just couldn't take it seriously. Any man who wears his underpants outside his pants just cannot be taken seriously. That was my foolish take on it. It was a joke, I thought. But how wrong was I?
Yeah, especially since you were in Remington Steele.
I mean, you'd had Superman...
Yeah,
come out a decade before this. There weren't superhero movies weren't a thing. Comic books were still mostly viewed as dumb. You just had Killing Joke and The Dark Knight come out recently.
The revolution of '86 was the big turning point.
Yeah, but I mean that hadn't migrated out to the mass culture.
No.
Why would any of these work? You're going to dress a guy up as a bat? And he's going to fight crime? That's stupid.
Well, we need to get into that later at some point, too. The whole seduction of the innocent comic books are for kids thing. That
Yes. I know. It's funny.
I'm
It's
just
like,
saying.
we need to have a chime that every time you say, we need to do seduction innocent, we press a button and like there's a siren that goes off. The seduction innocent siren.
No. That siren is specifically dedicated to me talking about Image Comics and ruining the comic book industry. But that's a different...
Woo, woo, woo. Beep, beep, beep. He said the noise.
It's the word of the day. What do you think, Cherry?
I think it sounds like shit.
I could use Zombie right now.
We all do, Skip. We all do.
Mm-hmm.
So at the time, Michael Keaton was essentially known for comedies, like Mr. Mom, Tim Burton's Beetlejuice. And when fans found out about it, they were apoplectic.
You've been sitting on that one for a while, haven't you?
Actually, that came right off the top of my dome. That's not written on my script.
Oh, I like that.
Over 50,000 fan letters screaming about Keaton's casting were sent to Warner Brothers. Just think about that. 50,000 times, people sat down, wrote out an entire letter, put it in an envelope, put a stamp on it, sent it out. Mm-hmm. Now, it's different like when you're just typing, Snyder's the best of all time, have him make everything. But that's just a passing whimsy. I don't see how many of those people are like really going to commit to the time and effort it takes, snail mail their thoughts to the rest of the world.
Well, the thing you're missing there is that it was 50,000 times written by 12 people. So,
Mom, I can't come to dinner. I got to write another angry letter.
Have you sent those letters out yet?
Got any more corn pops? The follow-up from this news and the fan reaction even tanked the film studio's share prices. Fans would be at conventions and be ripping up publicity material. In 1989, the Florida Sun-Sentinel quoted DC Comics writer Ralph Cabrera, who said, "It's like Rodney Dangerfield in a bat suit. You're going to laugh at it." Even one of the film producers, Michael Uslan, he had confronted Burton directly about this, saying, "Yeah, he's a comedian. I mean, what's this poster going to say? That Mr. Mom is Batman? I said that he's my height. He doesn't have the muscles. For God's sake, he doesn't even have the square jaw of Batman."
It's fair.
Even Adam West publicly declared he was a better choice than Michael Keaton.
Ironically, Adam West thought someone else was worse than he was to play Batman.
But, I mean, this really goes to show that everybody was wrong. Everybody couldn't see what Tim Burton could see and didn't realize his vision and how great it would be. But
it was a real Bruce Willis scenario, Die Hard.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, there's so many, like, of these amazing castings that people
literally laughed at.
Yeah. That, studios kind of fall ass backwards into. But you also think of, like, all the times that they push people into these roles. Like, who's the guy in Avatar?
So I have a funny theory about that guy. Is his name Worthington or...
Sam Worthington, right?
Sam Worthington?
Yeah, who's going to be like the next star. And so they're just shoving him in Avatar, putting him in the...
Terminator.
Terminator, that Gods movie,
Clash of the Titans.
Clashes of the Titans.
And then he did Man on Ledge, which they stopped trying with marketing on that one. Just see is what you get here. The thing about Sam Worthington I found really amusing is that, and I'm not looking at the dates in front of me to make it official, but like it seemed that they shoved him. It seemed like half a dozen films in like a year and a half. And then he did all of these movies before the first one that he was in even ever came out. Then like Avatar comes out, or whichever the first one was that he was in, it comes out, and it's like, oh, that guy, great. That was Hollywood inventing hype for a thing that people didn't want.
100%. They see the square jaw or the semi-muscly frame, and they're like, we can make money off of this guy. But he just didn't have the charisma. He didn't have the chops. It just didn't work.
Didn't have that Brian Bosworth juice, you know?
Are you saying he wasn't stone cold?
He was not stone cold enough.
So we wanted to talk about some of the casting in comic books that really worked. That, you know, kind of our best of.
Hell yeah.
Some that didn't work. Some that kind of changed the game. And maybe look inside our little fantasy bag and see what we find for what may come in the future.
I think they call those bags of holding.
You don't tell me about my spell bags, all right?
The ironic part is you're the one that plays D&D currently.
This is my bag of William holding, all right?
Oh, well, okay.
Do you have a list of like your top comic book casting? Who nailed it the most of all time?
Yeah, I mean, there are a few that I think you and I have discussed over the years that I think when they happened, we thought were great, and I think do still stand up to the test of time, especially if you go back to the beginning of this whole, you know, comic book movie glut. Patrick Stewart obviously stands out as Professor Xavier.
Yes.
I think he really defines the role. And it's funny because, like, we wouldn't have thought of him for multiple reasons before that movie casting was announced, because it seems... it's just because he's a bald man, and B, because he's not British, which is like kind of a thing that you would think would be an issue. But it really was just because Bryan Singer's a huge Star Trek fan.
Yes. Yeah, he was a big fan of Star Trek, though the studio lobbied for other more bankable actors. Singer felt that Stewart was the guy to do it. And actually, in 1988, a couple years before X-Men, a licensed novel called Planet X brought together the characters of Star Trek Next Generation and the X-Men. That book noted the physical similarities of Professor Charles Xavier and the Starship Captain Jean-Luc Picard.
I'm glad you brought that up. I owned that book, and it's actually not a bad book. In fact, strangely, both X-Men Star Trek crossover comic books are pretty good, like in a way that they shouldn't be. Culminating by the dumbest joke, but also kind of the greatest fanboy moment in the TOS X-Men crossover. Beast is in sickbay with Bones, and somebody comes in and calls for Dr. McCoy, and they both turn around and say, yes. It's a cheap one, but it still made me guffaw a little bit.
Yeah, I can buy that one. That's not bad.
That book is actually pretty good. They do a really good job of taking it really seriously.
I think Patrick Stewart is one of those ones. Him as Professor X, you can see him from page to screen. It's an easy transition right there. I think another one that's very similar, that is just, and truly, of all of these, maybe Patrick Stewart and this one have like stood the test of time, and that's J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson.
Oh, nice. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, going from multiple franchises, multiple Spider-Man franchises, and just being the one that's always around, because you can't beat it. I mean, there were other people up for that particular role, like R. Lee Ermey was considered, Hugh Laurie, Dennis Farina, Bill Paxton.
Oh, no, that would not have been good.
Stan Lee had always said that he wanted to play J. Jonah Jameson, and even auditioned for the role. But, of course, it was determined that he wasn't right for the role.
Oh, you think?
Yeah. He wasn't right for a lot of things.
Just like with Richard Donner's Superman, which, sometimes out of context, people who haven't seen it or younger people don't really understand. But that is an amazing achievement as a film, because it's not only a really seriously and well done film, despite all the stuff that's going on behind the scenes. It's the perfect Silver Age Superman, the best executed era-specific version of a superhero ever. Until you get to Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, those movies are 70s Spider-Man movies. Very specific. They're not Bronze Age, they're not Modern Age. I mean, Doc Ock literally robs a bank and has bags full of coins that he throws at people. It's a 70s era Spider-Man. And J.K. Simmons nails it as 70s era over the top cartoony cigar chomping newspaper editor. And then when you get to first with Far From Home and then in No Way Home, you've adapted his character to prove that archetype still fits in the zeitgeist. Now he's an Alex Jones, but it still works and he still kills it in that.
Yeah. 100%.
He's great.
Yeah. A guy who looks the part, and that has also further heightened his persona and his roles after that. You know, something like Whiplash. I think if you don't have J. Jonah Jameson to kind of inject that version of J.K. Simmons, I'm not sure if that role is given to him or if it works as well.
Do you remember that series where he plays his own alternate universe version of himself?
Yes.
Boy, you could really tie that into those Spider-Man movies.
Yeah. God, what was that called? I never finished that show.
I never even started it. I didn't even know what it was on. I just remember seeing previews for it.
It wasn't bad.
It was like a Showtime show or something.
Yes. I think it was like from BBC.
Oh.
Brought over to one of the studios.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'm not going to look it up. You guys can look it up yourselves.
Yeah, that's fine.
Do it.
We're going to go off on a tangent if we do that. We don't need to do that. We don't need a tangent universe. That's a comic book joke, ladies and gentlemen.
Probably the next generation of that would have been the 2000 superhero. I think it was probably perfectly defined and defined that character amazingly well with Hugh Jackman's casting as Wolverine.
Now you want to talk about controversial, and you want to talk about fanboy anger.
Yeah.
Let's tackle Hugh Jackman here, because
Please do.
None of us could now possibly imagine anyone else ever playing Wolverine.
To the point where they're trying to bring him back again after he's already dead.
Again. And Hugh Jackman is nearing 60.
Yeah, they literally did an Old Man Logan movie already.
Yeah, which was actually one of the best X-Men movies, also featuring Patrick Stewart.
Yes.
Kind of like with Michael Keaton and a couple of other big castings. That one's unique because, first of all, the character of Wolverine, for people who don't know, who haven't read the comics, he's supposed to be a very unattractive, tiny troll man. He's 5'3". He's hairy as hell. He's got weird hair and
gruff, drinking, smoking,
bitter, angry, profane. And then you get this beautiful Adonis of a man in Hugh Jackman, who's 6'4" and is cut as all hell.
Yeah. Yes. No, I like where you're going with this.
My biggest fantasy is to grease him down before every performance. He's like the exact opposite of what Wolverine is supposed to be. And yet, you can't imagine anyone else being Wolverine now.
Especially coming from musical theater, which is what he was doing.
True, yeah.
Who is this? They look up who he is, and he's like, oh, he's been doing off-Broadway musicals. This guy's going to be Wolverine?
He still does musical theater.
He still does. He literally hosted the Tonys multiple times.
Yeah. And by the way, is married to an older woman and loves the hell out of his wife. You got to love that guy. There's nothing about Hugh Jackman you don't love. And I always thought was kind of like ironic about this. And I know this is probably a very age specific thing too. But so when you and I were kids, one of the only times we ever saw X-Men on screen in general was in that made-for-TV, or maybe it was direct-to-video, animated feature, the Pride of the X-Men.
Pride of the X-Men?
The Kitty Pryde before the Fox X-Men animated series.
Oh, okay.
And so in it, Wolverine is voiced over by an Australian actor with an Australian accent. And so when I was a kid, I always just assumed, I knew he was Canadian, but I always just imagined him, even just reading the comics, I just imagined him having an Australian accent. I don't really know why, it just made sense to me. And so when they casted an Australian actor to play Wolverine, kind of fried my brain a little bit.
Huh.
An Australian actor playing a Canadian mutant. Not using his accent.
Interesting. I'd never put that together, but that's fascinating.
Also, as a side tangent, just from this very specific example, I remember reading, and I could be misremembering a little bit, when they did X-Men First Class, and they had James McAvoy as Xavier, who's Scottish, and they had casted Rose Byrne to play Moira McTaggart, a Scottish woman, and he was super upset that they wouldn't let Rose Byrne use her Scottish accent to play a fucking Scottish character. Come on, man.
It's always one of those weird things of like, when they cast Gwen Stacy, they picked a red-haired woman to dye her hair blonde. And when they cast Mary Jane, they cast a blonde woman, made her dye her hair red.
Yes, I still rant about that. Like, Bryce Dallas Howard plays Gwen Stacy, but Kirsten Dunst plays Mary Jane Watson? Are you fucking kidding me? That doesn't make any goddamn sense.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, especially since you could definitely reverse those, and I would not complain one bit.
Couple weird things about Wolverine, though, before we go. Their first choice, do you know who the first choice to play Wolverine was?
I do believe their first choice was Joaquin Phoenix, correct?
No. The first choice,
I know we're going to get into Doug Ray Scott, but
Russell Crowe was actually the very first one, who is from New Zealand, a weird Aussie, New Zealand, Aussie Kiwi thing going on.
crossover thing.
We can get into those other guys. I also want to mention one quick thing before we talk about Doug Ray and whatnot. When Hugh Jackman got the character Wolverine, he didn't read the comic books. He was like, all right, got to think about wolves and being like a wolf. And Bryan Singer's like, no, it's from the weasel family. It's a big weasel
like
in
a badger.
America. Yeah. And he's like, oh, okay.
You can't blame him. I mean, Australia's got some other weird that, we have.
Oh, no, man. If Australia had Wolverines, they'd be like flying, would have like spit venom out of their eyes.
Bat wings. And
They would have like Omega Red's death factor just emanating from their bodies.
They'd make spider webs. And yeah, I know.
That melt your face.
Wolverines are relatively uncommon in, like most of North America. I mean, they're more in the snowier regions of North America.
How about you take off, hoser?
Why doesn't he talk like that? Why does Wolverine talk like that? Is it because he wiped his memory?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, he used to just be like one of the Strange Brew guys, but then Weapon X program, like, no, you can't be going into battle and say, hey, I'm gonna stab you, right?
Danny Thomas didn't survive the adamantium.
Oh
graft.
man, now I'm just thinking of the guys from Letterkenny going into the Weapon X program.
I still don't understand your resistance to Trailer Park Boys. It's still baffling to me.
Yeah, Trailer Park Boys is fine.
Oh, you said you hated it.
I did not say I hated it. I never said I hated it. Letterkenny is superior in every way, shape, and form.
That is a complete opposite of the truth. I'm sorry.
Nope, the facts have been spoken. They cannot be undone.
These are two camps that never the two shall meet. I want to know what Canadian fans think about this.
Yeah, if
debate.
you're hearing this in Canada, even if you're just passing through Canada, it counts. Please let us know. Is it Letterkenny? Is it Trailer Park Boys? What say ye?
If you're listening in Canada, first of all, good day.
Good day. Please go out in the snow and throw another shrimp on the barbie.
But yeah, so then I had read that in the mix was Joaquin Phoenix. I don't know if that was more speculation than anything else. I had heard Russell Crowe. I just forgot about that. If you wanted a fat, tubby, drunken Wolverine, which I mean, that kind of tracks.
Yeah.
But you could also say that if they had casted Meatloaf. So I don't, whatever.
So Doug Ray.
And then there was Doug Ray Scott, who most of you probably don't remember because he wasn't Wolverine.
Yeah, imagine if Sam Worthington was like up for Avatar, but then he had to drop out.
Because he was hurt. Doug Ray Scott is a Scottish actor who was, originally cast to be Wolverine.
He should have been Doug Ray Canadian, huh?
Yeah, all right. That's Doug Ray Canuck.
Doug Ray A.
So he was right before the filming of X-Men. I mean, right before the filming of the first X-Men movie. He was injured on the set of John Woo's Mission Impossible 2, which is travesty for a lot of reasons. Mostly because that movie sucks. Even though it's better than a lot of those movies, mostly just by virtue of being done by John Woo. He gets hurt on the set of that. And it's funny, if you watch that movie, if you ever get a wild hair, go back and rewatch it, because there is that weird stereotype about Scottish people's accents being indecipherable. I don't know what the hell half of Doug Ray Scott's dialogue was. I had to turn on the subtitles, and I don't normally have that problem. I watch a lot of, you and I both watch like British and Scottish and Irish stuff. I don't know what the he was saying half the time. It was just like, it was like he was gargling gravy. So he gets hurt on the set of that, and so he can't do X-Men because it's due to start filming literally weeks later.
Yeah, because he was cast. He had won the role.
He landed the role.
Oh, how things might have changed.
Did Hugh Jackman even...
So they needed someone quick, and actually Russell Crowe, who they had wanted, he's the guy who suggested his friend, Hugh Jackman, to Bryan Singer. And so then he auditioned him and cast him right quick.
Literally like 2 weeks before they started filming.
It's very similar to Viggo Mortensen on Lord of the Rings, the actor who's cast to play Aragorn just didn't work out. And so, like, they brought him in a week or two before they started filming that. And then he was there for, 18 months.
Kind of a Back to the Future scenario, except they actually had already been filming for like 8 weeks before they recasted it with Michael J. Fox. Kind of like the Daenerys in the original pilot for Game of Thrones that they completely scrapped and then set on fire because it was terrible.
Stuart Townsend. That's who it was.
Oh, it was Stuart Townsend? No, Stuart Townsend actually went on to do stuff.
Like what?
Okay, well, ironically, miscast roles. For instance, Stuart Townsend later plays the vampire Lestat in Queen of the Damned.
I wouldn't say that's not bringing home the bacon there, Bob.
And also in the biggest travesty for geeks like us, he's in the remake of Kolchak the Night Stalker.
Oh.
The gritty reboot. He plays Kolchak.
Right. Again, nothing there. Nobody
What are you
watched
doing? No, it was like 6 episodes. Like nobody, and it was bad. Which is funny because the original Kolchak was like, I don't know what, like 12 episodes?
Yeah, it was not much.
That was the most lifeless sleepwalk of a reboot of a great franchise that I have ever seen. Like, let's take all the things that are great about Kolchak, the quirkiness, the sort of goofiness, the sort of lightheartedness contrasted with the backdrop of these dark topics, and just make it shittier. There we go. Well, if it had been on CBS, it would have lasted 15 seasons, so it doesn't matter.
The only role that I really remember him in was as Dorian Gray in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen movie.
Oh, wow, nailing it there, too. Jesus Christ.
But at least it plays that one okay. But he's just kind of like...
For what it is. It's not even in the comic.
No, it's but it's the only good thing they added.
Another full circle moment. Sean Connery only did that movie because he's like, well, I didn't get... Because he was supposed to play Gandalf in Lord of the Rings. He was supposed to play Morpheus in The Matrix. Turned down both of those roles because he, quote, didn't get it. And then when they offered him this, he goes, well, I can't turn down another one. And they're like, well, how did that work out, idiot? Even though, actually, that's a good casting for Alan Quartermain, to be honest. It's just a bad movie.
They screwed that whole thing up, top to bottom, really. So I don't want to go through a few... God, it seems stupid to even continue with this.
By the way, Blade, the casting of Wesley Snipes, pretty good.
I think
actually.
so. He makes the list of my top 5 castings that redefine characters. So you had a character in comic books or in pop culture, and then once they were cast, that particular actor, their essence, completely revolutionized how that character was seen from that point on.
Sure.
I think Wesley Snipes
Hugh
is one of
Jackman
those.
being one.
I think Robert Downey Jr., his version of Tony Stark, I think that changed how Tony Stark was written after that.
That is an interesting debate to have because with Robert Downey Jr., the reason he was perfect for that role because that is Tony Stark. Like he had his own, he went through the same sort of like...
Mm-hmm. Battling his demons,
he was a drunk.
as you might say.
Yes, exactly. He battled that demon in a bottle. When Robert Downey Jr. was found in that little girl's bed, that house he climbed into when he was on that bender, it pretty much ended his career until Iron Man. And he was the perfect choice for Tony Stark. However, in those movies, they never tackle his actual addiction problem.
Yes, well, I mean, that gets into the puritanical nature of the Marvel and Disney properties, and you can't really get into too much adult stuff. That's why it has to be such a big thing when, oh my God, the married androids lie on top of each other, sexless,
and dry hump, but only after they're married.
Yeah, but I think Robert Downey Jr., Tony Stark on the page, he was written a certain way, and then after Iron Man came out and was a huge success, he changed. I think the way that he was written and portrayed in every other version of Iron Man, in video games, in cartoons, it became the Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man.
Yeah, but isn't the only real difference that he was just snarkier?
Yeah, but that became a huge part of his character.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, I'm not arguing that you're wrong. I'm just saying, like, I don't know if it was like it really changed the essence of the character. They just kind of they changed the kind of the way that he interacted with other characters.
I think a similar way would be Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. I think once she got that, the way that Harley Quinn has been portrayed after that is, I think, very different from pre-Margot Robbie Harley Quinn.
Sure. Well, yeah, but I mean, there wasn't like a long history of Harley in the comics. I mean, she was created in the 90s by Paul Dini. So, I mean,
It's true. But I also think that the character change, both in look, in spirit, in dialogue, it's very, very different.
I think that feels like more of a natural evolution to me, though, because like when you're introduced to Harley, you're introduced to her in Batman the Animated Series, where she is this like weird subservient like sidekick to the Joker, and then it wasn't until a little bit later that they start getting into her origin and why she is who she is, and then it isn't until the Margot Robbie stuff. Well, quite frankly, the later Margot Robbie stuff, because that Suicide Squad was the original Suicide Squad was nothing. I feel like they really just kind of expanded on what they were kind of already getting to in her character. Now, no, I agree. It probably guided that, but I don't think it altered it. I think it more just like helped further define her character.
I think there was a evolution of that character, but this, I think, was a leap in that particular evolution. I think there's a definitive jump from one version of that character to this version of that character. I think one that's maybe even more prolific is Chris Pratt's Star-Lord.
Oh, big time. Yes.
That character was... Yeah. He's not a character. He's nothing.
No, he's a nothing
just
character.
A guy.
How that movie worked, I will never know, because that comic was... It's like that should have been like Eternals, but it actually was just kind of magical because of James Gunn. It really had nothing to do with that. In fact, I think the reason that worked is because they were nothing characters, and James Gunn was able to just go, you know what? I'm just going to do whatever, and I'm going to make good characters that work in this universe, and it has nothing to do with what they are in the comics, like at all.
100%.
I mean, same with even Rocket and Groot. That's not at all what they're like in the comics, but you know what? It works.
Yeah, Rocket was a little bit more like that. I mean, in comparison to like Star-Lord or Gamora or Nebula.
Gamora especially.
Those were like, or Drax.
Oh, that's way different.
I mean, he was a little closer to this version of Drax than he was like the original Drax, who like wore a skull cap and a cape.
And had that skull like medallion putting his cape on. And
this version of Drax is much different. But the version of Drax that they kind of drew from kind of the Abnett Lanning stuff was definitely more like this, like the cinematic Drax.
Yeah, the MCU Guardians draws more from the Annihilation crossover arc. Even just aesthetically draws much more from that. And yeah, I mean, that's true. Kate is still to this day upset that in Endgame it wasn't Nebula who got the gauntlet to snap everything, because that's what happens in the comic.
Yeah.
And it would actually make sense even in the context of the MCU storyline. That would still make sense. Like, she would sacrifice herself as her ultimate, like, arc, her turning against her father. That would have made sense, but whatever. That's neither here nor there.
Yeah. The only other one I would throw in there is maybe Tom Hiddleston. I think his version of Loki, there's a big change from that version of Loki that is profligated in comics after him to the Loki before that, who is not nearly as fun.
Well, I don't know. I don't know if that's good or bad. I love Tom Hiddleston's
it's just
Loki,
different.
and I love
that's all.
It is different. Loki in the comics, up until basically, like, I'd say the Ultimates, nobody really knows what to do with. Which once again, the cinematic version draws mostly from the Ultimates and things like that. In fact, Avengers specifically steals from the Ultimates.
Oh, yes.
In like 1,000 ways.
Yes. The Ultimates is a huge influence.
Including the Chitauri.
Yeah. Sam Jackson as Nick Fury.
As Nick Fury. Literally. That's the only time. Yes. So this is one that goes against the grain of what we're talking about, is in the Ultimate Universe. And if you listen to our multiverse episode, we talk about the Ultimate Universe, which was created to streamline the Marvel Universe for people who had only seen the movies that had just come out, which is why in the Ultimate Universe, Wolverine is now 6'4", as Hugh Jackman is. because that comes out in like 2002, which is right after the, you know, X-Men. And with Ultimates, which was their version of the Avengers, you see in that one, Mark Miller and
Brian Hitch,
thank you. They were like, you know what, it'd be really cool if he was Sam Jackson. And so they draw him as Sam Jackson, and then that's the only reason they cast Sam Jackson, was because he appeared that way in one alternate version of Nick Fury, and it worked so well. It's an opposite of what we're talking about, where like the character in the comics has changed based on a really cool casting. This one is like, they got a really cool casting because someone figured out how to change that character into something really cool. So instead of David Hasselhoff, you get, you know, Sam Jackson. And I'm like, okay, all right, let's run with it. Let's just go. It's one of the most fanboy moments of all time. It's like if Simon Pegg had actually been in The Boys.
Yes, yeah.
You know?
Or Eminem was in Wanted.
No. But that movie is doomed for so many reasons.
Oh, yeah.
Especially since the cat is supposed to be, is literally modeled after Halle Berry, and then they make her Angelina Jolie.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, the magic loom.
Boy, does that have nothing to do with that comic book at all. Even more so than Eternals.
Similar misguided. I wanted to throw out a misguided castings that got them completely wrong and focused on the absolutely wrong parts of these characters when choosing who to play. The top of my list would be Michael Chiklis as the Thing in Fantastic Four.
Oof.
Oof.
You can see kind of what they thought they were going for. You can see what they thought
they were going, but the whole idea of the Thing is he's a good-looking guy who gets turned into a rock monster. So how about not turn a rock monster into another rock monster? Because there's no change there.
You know what, though? I will take Michael Chiklis over that Josh Trank version. Like any day.
I think if we could pick and choose, like the salad bar, of which parts of Fantastic Four that we'd like to keep.
The egg gen salad bar.
I mean, or if we could just go to a different restaurant, that'd be fine with me. I could do away with all of it.
It's like leaving Ponderosa to go to Golden Corral. I don't know. You know, it's...
Oh, wow.
I don't know. It's not really much of an upgrade, but at least it's not as bad. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. That one was horribly In fact, that entire movie is completely miscast.
Yeah, another one on my list actually comes from that movie, Jessica Alba as Sue Storm. Because they're both women?
Wow.
Is that why? And you made one blonde? That's it?
And has blue eyes in only one of those movies?
There's literally nothing there.
No, there's nothing there. And Ian Griffith, I like Ian Griffith as an actor. And you know what? Maybe in a better situation, he would find Reed Richards, I guess. I mean, whatever. It's fine. Whatever. But like, there is nothing to work with in that, like, at all.
No, nothing. I mean, Chris Evans as Johnny Storm. All right. That's fine.
Okay,
that's fine.
It's whatever. No. It's not well written, but it's not terribly miscast.
No, and he does perfectly well with what he's given.
And you know what? Michael B. Jordan is fine. I have no problem with Michael B. Jordan in that role. Just explain to me what the dynamic of that family is in that movie. I need to know more about that. I'm very confused.
Well, getting anything.
No, we'll have to rant about that Josh Trank one a different time.
That can probably be its own thing.
There's so much wrong with that. Yeah, like we'll go on for 3 hours about how bad that movie is.
Another one would be Arnold Schwarzenegger as Mr. Freeze.
Oof.
I mean, you're completely missing the point and just throwing a name at the screen.
Yeah, it's Jim Carrey's the Riddler.
Yeah, but at least...
There's no defending that one. I'm sorry.
I don't think Jim Carrey's Riddler is as bad as Arnold Schwarzenegger's Mr. Freeze.
Well, but I mean that's just equally proportionate to the quality of those two movies.
Perhaps, but at least I can buy Jim Carrey's Riddler more than I can. I don't know. They both are awful.
I mean, Uma Thurman was also terrible in that movie, but which is not her fault.
No, that's how it was written. I mean, she does what she's supposed to do, but they don't know what the hell they're doing.
Let's not forget about Bane being in that movie.
Yeah.
Oh my god. He's a plant monster. So, because you were talking about miscastings.
Yeah. I'd mentioned Ryan Reynolds as Hal Jordan.
Okay, I was about to come to that. I don't hate that.
And why is that?
I mean, at what point did anybody ever sit down as kids and go, man, I can't wait to see Green Lantern on the big screen. He's going to be one of my favorite actors that's going to play this role that nobody gives a shit about. I mean, no, people like Green Lantern. Green Lantern's a great character. Is there anybody that you go, man, there's Hal Jordan. There he is. Finally, Hal Jordan. No. I mean, maybe Dennis Quaid in his heyday. I don't know.
Ooh, yeah, that's a pretty good one.
Is Hal Jordan? Actually, that's the only one that I could ever think of.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Wow.
That one just came off the dome, too. I don't know. Actually, now I kind of want to see that.
Yeah.
Like, even today, Dennis Quaid could do it.
I think the issue with that is that they cast essentially a comedian and made it a comedy?
Go one way or the other, but don't just try and half-ass it.
It's very much like hey, Ryan Reynolds, we're going to cast you in this movie. Could you punch up the script as we're going along? This may be a hot take. I don't think any of the Batman's cast have been necessarily awful. I think they all have their strengths and weaknesses.
Val Kilmer's stretching it a little bit.
The thing I like about Val Kilmer's Batman is that I like his detached Bruce Wayne.
His aloofness.
Yeah, I like that he's like kind of sleepwalking through being a human being.
Yeah, I can see that. And we're still talking about a movie that's done, by Joel Schumacher. So it's like, obviously you're not going to bring much to the table in general. But yeah, no, I agree with you. You know what I always said was that, like, I really liked, Keaton wasn't really Batman or Superman. I'm sorry, Batman or Bruce Wayne, but he made them both work somehow, but not in a way that you would ever think like, oh, that's Batman or oh, that's Bruce Wayne. Batman more so than Bruce Wayne, but except I liked the funny, quirky Bruce Wayne. That was fun too. But it really wasn't what we think of, especially if you think about the fact that Alec Baldwin was originally supposed to be that, who at that point, that age, Alec Baldwin, you're going to tell me there's a better Bruce Wayne Batman than Alec Baldwin era Hunt for Red October? Sorry. That would have been the perfect casting of all time. Val Kilmer just was what he was. And then George Clooney, I think, is like the perfect Bruce Wayne, especially that era, George Clooney. That's Bruce Wayne. He's kind of like this like facade of a person. He kind of smarmy. He's very like confident but charismatic. You can tell he's not a real human being. He's just kind of like this like plastic thing that he's a mask that Batman puts on, but also a terrible Batman.
Yes.
He's a great
Bruce Wayne, awful Batman. It's kind of it's like the Spider-Man issue where Tobey Maguire is a good 70s Peter Parker, but a bad Spider-Man. Andrew Garfield is a good 90s Spider-Man, but an awful Peter Parker. And then Tom Holland's kind of a bit of both, but never really better than either of them, but is the right mix of the two, I guess?
Right, which is Christian Bale.
Yes.
It's just kind of the right mix, not what you'd expect from either, but a really good mix of the two.
Yeah, he's
a good middle ground.
It's not the tastiest porridge, but it's the porridge that will serve the meal the best.
Yeah, so everyone in our audience can relate to porridge.
Well, it was kind of like the Goldilocks thing, It's like,
yeah, I see what you're trying to get.
Okay. This one's too hot. This one's too cold. This one has a hand in it. This one.
this one's got Hitler's head in it. I would never have cast Christian Bale in either of those roles, but the way that the movie was written and the way that he balances out both Bruce and Batman, fantastic. Great casting for that film. Maybe not on paper in other productions, but absolutely great. Which brings us to an interesting what if, and that you had mentioned earlier a little bit. There was at one point where Batman was going to be directed by...
Working under a different script, Ivan Reitman, Joe Dante, and Wes Craven were all...
It was Reitman.
Yeah. All of those were approached and or thought of as helming the project.
the Reitman project got the most traction because he had just come off of Ghostbusters. And there was a script, and they had gotten to the point where they had pitched casting, including Bill Murray as Batman, which was interesting because he was using basically the same logic that Burton used for Michael Keaton. And as silly and ridiculous and bad nuts as that sounds, I would have liked to have seen what he did with it. You know, because we don't get serious Bill Murray until, Jim Jarmusch gets a hold of him, or Sofia Coppola? Sofia Coppola, probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Murray renaissance didn't happen until way later in his career. And I kind of would like to have seen what he did with a serious version of Batman. You know what I mean? Like an actual, tortured Keaton-esque approach to that character. I don't think it would have worked, but it would be really interesting to see what would have happened. Especially considering in that production, the casting of the Joker was offered to David Bowie.
Mm-hmm.
You tell me that's not one of the coolest castings of all time. I mean, that could have carried the whole film, to be honest.
Talking about that same version, you have, at least from the scriptwriter Mankiewicz, he had wanted an unknown actor for Batman. He had wanted William Holden for James Gordon, David Niven for Alfred Pennyworth, and Peter O'Toole as the Penguin.
Whoa, that's all
and
over
Reitman
the place.
wanted Eddie Murphy as Robin.
Which is hilarious because Burton then goes ahead and casts Marlon Wayans as Robin in a movie that never ended up being made, who still gets paid royalties.
Yeah, it's great.
By the way.
Good for him.
It's like Steve Young's contract with the USFL. Like, I don't know, some of those casts, that's interesting. Some of those would have been good. I don't know about Peter O'Toole in that, but some of those other ones, yeah, I kind of like that. I don't know. That would have been fascinating to see what happens there. I mean, if you get the right script, you get the right tone, yeah. All right.
It's hard to see. Mankiewicz, he took inspiration from Steve Englehart's Batman Strange Apparitions. You know, it's kind of dealing with Dick Grayson's origin with the Joker and Rupert Thorne as villains, with Silver St. Cloud as the romantic interest.
Oh, wow. That's a deep
I don't know
cut.
if it would have been more in the vein of a Tim Burton,
Bruce Wayne,
or if it would have been unable to escape the Adam Westness of things.
No matter what, any Batman project was dealing with that baggage. You know, there was a reason that people didn't, especially actual comic book fans and people in the industry, refused to even admit that Batman 66 happened until recently, until we finally were kind of like, okay, we can go back and laugh at it
Looking
now.
at other possible, through the different iterations of the Batman film, of other possible Jokers, man, this is just a murderer's row. Tim Curry.
I love it. I love it
crazy.
already.
John Lithgow.
Kinda
Brad
like it.
Dourif.
Also kind of
Ray
love it.
Liotta.
Don't like it.
Maybe in a certain version.
I don't know. I see him being more like a Carmine Falcone type
Well, I
character,
mean,
but whatever.
it's tough to get out of the Goodfellas kind of mindset for that.
Yeah,
James
that's true.
Woods.
No, because then we'd have to deal with that baggage now, and
Yeah.
I don't want to deal with that.
Burton
at all.
originally wanted to cast John Glover, but the studio insisted on using movie star, and Robin Williams pushed really hard for the role.
He also had been cast as the Riddler at one point, if Tim Burton was going to do a Batman 3, if I remember correctly. In fact, no, actually, even I think they offered him Riddler even in Batman Forever, but he turned it down, if I remember
Well,
right.
would that have been coming off of Aladdin, and he kind of wanted to get out of doing that thing?
I don't know, maybe. I mean, either way, he got screwed in Aladdin.
Well, that's
so,
a whole nother.
So that's a different, yeah. Henry Cavill's an inspired choice. I really hate almost every film that he's in as Superman, but as Superman aesthetically, especially, and as an actor, I think he's a good actor too. It's kind of perfect. And he's a Chiefs fan. I mean, come on. He literally became a Chiefs fan because when he was cast as Superman, he went like, oh, what American teams would Superman root for? And so that's why in Man of Steel, he's wearing a Royals t-shirt at one point, and he is legitimately a Kansas City Chiefs fan. So I don't know. I think that's
method acting.
I kind of like, It kind of, yeah. I just wish they had better movies for him. He's kind of like Pierce Brosnan as Bond. Man, I wish they'd had better movies for him. Because and especially with Pierce Brosnan, poor guy, one of the biggest screw jobs of all time. He had been cast as Bond, but he was doing a show called Remington Steele on NBC, and he was literally on his way to the press conference. He was in the back room, like waiting to be announced on stage, and NBC wanted to cash in on Pierce Brosnan fever, even though nobody liked or watched Remington Steele. So they announced while he was like preparing for the press conference that Remington Steele had been renewed for season 2 and that his contract wouldn't let him out to do movies.
We're never letting you go, Pierce.
Yeah, and then I don't even know if they finished that second season. I don't even know if they even bothered, because that show is nothing. It's a nothing show. But yeah, poor guy. And then so when he finally becomes Bond, it's like, great, I have to follow Timothy Dalton. Well, this is fun. Even though I actually like Timothy Dalton, and I don't hate those two movies. They were very of their time. They were trying to get over the schlockiness of Roger Moore, and I respect it.
It always felt like they were the pre-Craig films.
Yeah, and it's funny because everyone hated them at the time, but if you go back and look at them, you're like, these were actually some of the better ones. Benicio del Toro is a villain in one of them. I mean, yeah, so Henry Cavill got screwed being Superman, but man, he's a good one. So here's some of the worst ones that thankfully never happened.
Okay.
And I say this because there's a possibility that this might come up again. I've heard rumor that they actually, now that they're just throwing everything at the wall, multiverse-wise, that this person might make a cameo in a future film. Tom Cruise as Iron Man.
Really?
I'm not. I mean, it might be just be fanboy rumor, but I've heard rumblings of this.
That's never gonna happen.
Yeah, for a long time, Cruise was attached to produce and star in Iron Man, long before Marvel Studios was a thing. Cruise's stubbornness about the project kept the film we know and love from getting kicked off. He held the rights for a really long time, and Marvel had to fight to get it back. Tom Cruise basically blocked that movie from happening for a long time. Essentially the same way that Edward Norton has cock-blocked Marvel into having the ability to make a Hulk solo film. You will never see a Hulk standalone film, which is fine with me because I don't need a Hulk standalone.
It's become the indelible Hulk at this point.
So he can go on to make a bunch of mediocre Mission Impossible films.
Yeah, tell me how you really feel.
And then, of course, there was one of the nuttiest productions that almost happened, so close to going to principal photography, is, of course, Nicolas Cage's Superman.
Oh, classic.
It's good stuff. You probably know about this one due to some of the leaked images online from Tim Burton's failed Superman Lives project from the 90s. And the sad, crazy thing is that the film actually got pretty far. It had sets, it had costumes. Some of the elements of it based on the documentary The Death of Superman Lives were actually kind of interesting. It wouldn't have been as bad as Man of Steel, right? I mean, would it have been worse than Man of Steel?
Yeah, I think it would have.
Yeah, probably. It's probably why it never happened. Burton brought the outside-the-box casting idea. Nick Cage's tortured performance in stuff like Leaving Las Vegas, I'm sure he thought would have added some depth and some unforeseen nuance to Superman. But I don't think Burton could have caught lightning in a bottle twice.
No, and that also feels like casting someone who is in love with the role and is pushing hard for themselves to be in it. Because Cage is such a Superman stan. I mean, didn't he name his child Cal?
Kal-El Coppola
Exactly.
Cage.
That is the person you don't cast in that role. They're too close to it.
You don't cast Sean Young as Catwoman because then she's going to break into your house late at night.
I'm okay with that personally. 1980s Sean Young breaking into my house in a cat suit? Yes, please.
Just off the top of my head, there was the tragic non-casting of Emily Blunt as Black Widow, which is a real shame, honestly, because not only is she a better actress than Scarlett Johansson and a better Black Widow than Scarlett Johansson, but she couldn't get out of her shooting schedule of the Jack Black version of Gulliver's Travels.
Didn't she choose to be in Gulliver's Travels instead?
I thought she'd already signed the contract.
I think she said that she had the choices between the two, and she chose to be in Gulliver's Travels. Saying something like, "Well, I don't want to be in a superhero film."
Now she's begging for it.
Please cast me and my hubby in as Reed and Sue. Okay. There was a thought of having Robin Williams play Rorschach.
Oh, wow. Okay. Was that David Hayter's?
I know it's one of the early versions of Watchmen.
Was it Paul Greengrass's Watchmen? Or was it Terry Gilliam's Watchmen?
Yeah.
That would make more sense.
How about Aaron Paul as Star-Lord?
Interesting. I don't hate that. I like Aaron Paul, and I think he gets a little pigeonholed because of Jesse Eisenberg, but I get just now seeing in my head, I'm not from space, I'm from Missouri, bitch. That is interesting. Still not the comic character at all, but
doing its own thing.
Unfortunately, I think it's the most perfect thing Chris Pratt has ever been in. It's the most Chris Pratt thing you can do without being Chris Pratt and ruining it.
It's like Ryan Reynolds of Deadpool. He just became that character in all of his future characters.
Well, yeah, I mean, because he was just perfect for it. I mean, and he knew it, and everyone in the dogs know it. He's perfect for Deadpool. He just is.
How about Josh Hartnett as Loki?
He almost was Batman as well. He turned down the role of Batman, which then went to Christian Bale, and he regretted that for the rest of his life.
Good call for all of us. How about Zooey Deschanel as Harley Quinn?
I'm glad we don't live in this world. Because she's a nothing person. She's got no real personality. She's got no charisma. She's got pretty eyes, essentially, is her entire shtick.
I just don't see how that would translate to Harley Quinn.
God, it would have been as bad as Eva Mendes was in The Spirit. Like a 2x4. Which is not Eva Mendes' fault either. It's because Frank Miller directed that movie. The only movie I've walked out of twice. Worst superhero film of all time.
Possibly the greatest amalgamated talent that did not get the role are the names that were floated around Superman, the 1970s.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
there's
it's
a lot of
all
good ones
over
in
the
there.
place. From Elton John to Muhammad Ali.
What? That would have been ironic, considering they fought in the 70s. Robert Redford got to the point where he screen tested.
Right, yeah.
I mean, like, we all go, that's stupid because Christopher Reeve kills it, and he does, and he deserves that role. But, man, Robert Redford wouldn't have been bad. He's got that voice. He's got that swagger. He's got that sort of, like, smarmy charm to him.
Is that Superman, though? I don't know. I mean, that feels more like a Bruce Wayne, honestly.
Actually, you're might know something there. No, I wouldn't have hated that. No, he would actually made a pretty good Bruce Wayne. Like, if you swap out, like, Val Kilmer for young Robert Redford, I'd be like, that makes sense.
Other names, Dustin Hoffman?
Yes, I remember he got pretty far, but he's too short. I think it was essentially how that broke down.
I don't understand how Charles Bronson was up in the running. Chris Christopherson?
That one is interesting. It wouldn't have worked in any way, but he is a presence.
Kind of.
I'm not saying they would have been a good Superman. I'm just saying, like, I could see where they wanted to give it a shot and see what would have happened.
It's tough for me to see Chris Christopherson as Kal-El flying around.
You chicken.
Hey, Lex, you're about a hillbilly hair away from me kicking your ass.
I mean, it's like that and Convoy are the only two things that Chris Christopherson belongs in.
Oh, man.
Was he in that second remake of
Yes,
A Star
he
Is
was.
Born? Okay, he's good in that, actually. And, of course, yeah, we've all heard a lot of those casting rumors and stuff, but I think there's some good runners-up. Like, I really like James Marsters as Cyclops. Or is it Marsden?
The great geek problem. Is it Marsters or Marsden?
Yeah, is it Bill Pullman or Paxton?
So Marsden of Sonic the Hedgehog fame.
Oh, that's what he's famous for.
It
Good.
was the number one grossing film of 2020, I think.
And it was the number one grossest film of 2020. Marsden does a really good job of that 90s interpretation of Cyclops where he's just kind of a douchebag. He's sort of some preppy frat guy that everyone hates, and everyone roots for Wolverine all of a sudden, and with Jean instead of him. Because there is a renaissance for Cyclops later on. He starts banging Emma Frost, and then you're like, wow, you've got a type.
Everyone's got he branched out. Let him live his life.
Did he? He likes hot telepaths.
Yeah,
great.
So do I. So...
yeah, I know. Right, yeah. You don't go for the empath thing. You're not a Deanna Troi fan, but man,
there's too many feels with Deanna. I mean, I like someone who can take my mind into space, into another dimension as I'm,
You're having a Caprica 6 sex scene.
I want my mind truly blown.
Out of an airlock.
I'm barely using it.
Jesus, talk about bad casting. January Jones as Emma Frost. Oh my.
Yes, she's also given nothing to do. It's a rough one for her, but that isn't our version of Emma Frost.
Well, you watch Mad Men and you totally understand where they're coming from. She's a tall blonde bombshell and you're like, okay, yeah, let's see what happens. But then it turns out that she was just accidentally good at that role. There's nothing there. It's like Seinfeld. It's like, I am open. There's just nothing in there.
Maybe it's because her name is just so comic booky.
Well, I mean, that didn't hurt. There's so many things about that era of X-Men movies that get everything so wrong. Like, specifically in X-Men Origins Wolverine, obviously, they finally cast Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool and somehow managed to screw it up in the most epically bad way possible. And then you have that dude that plays the Blob.
Yeah, why? Why is that the direction you go in?
I don't know. It didn't make any sense. And they tried to give it an arc that he became the Blob because he had some sort of insecure eating problem. And you're like, wow, just stop. Just stop. The casting of Gambit in that film, I didn't hate. He had just come off of Friday Night Lights. I don't think he's that bad an actor. It's just...
You just like the kitsch of it all, don't you?
It's kitschy. It is kitschy. I'll say that. I liked it better than the Channing Tatum Gambit movie that's never going to happen.
I mean, neither really work for my version of Gambit in my head. But,
well, no, none of them are Cajun.
Channing Tatum, he has some charisma.
What was his name? Taylor Kitsch?
Taylor Kitsch, yep. Of the failed John Carter of Mars franchise.
Swing and a miss. That was in development hell for 15,000 years. And this is the ultimate, man, what great casting. God damn it, we can't ever talk about this ever again. Kevin Spacey as Lex Luthor is probably the most perfect villain casting of all.
Of all time?
Superhero villain casting?
Magneto?
He's right up.
Maybe both Magnetos?
Yeah, I mean, they're both very good, even though we have a serious Obi-Wan problem there, where you go from hunky Fassbender to decrepit Ian McKellen in 20 years.
Being a mutant like that, it really puts the miles on.
Yeah, it's not the years, sweetheart, it's the mileage. But, I mean, Kevin Spacey...
You're skipping all the Jokers, too.
Well, we talked about all the Jokers, didn't we?
Yes, I think we had a discussion. Well, we didn't have, a huge discussion about all the Jokers. But I'm just saying, as, best superhero villain, as much as you like Kevin Spacey is...
Spacey's brings this darkness to it. And it turns out because he is a villain, so I guess that's the real reason that's a thing.
Some method acting going on there.
Cesar Romero, his Joker, is kind of inspired. I hate to say it, but most of the villains in Batman 66, other than Vincent Price's Egghead is whatever because it's Vincent Price, which is great, and Egghead, who's a terrible and non-existent character. Frank Gorshin, in context, kills it as the Riddler. Burgess Meredith kills it as the Penguin. Much more so than Danny DeVito does. And I like Danny DeVito in that movie, but Burgess Meredith in that context is such the perfect 60s Penguin that it's really hard to beat.
Yeah, it's I think both of them are kind of stupid in a way. They're both fun for different reasons.
Sure.
It's tough for me to say he's a great caricature of the Penguin.
You and I grew up on the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, Super Friends cartoon and...
Yeah, we grew up on... Which were all just kind of extensions of the Batman 66 era. And tell me that Burgess Meredith isn't the Penguin in that era. In that era.
Oh, yes. Right? Yeah.
He's great.
It's a tough character to buy into. I mean, it's something we're not necessarily saying for the other ones, for the Joker or the Riddler.
Mm-hmm.
Those translate a bit more than the Burgess Meredith Penguin.
Well, yeah, because Cesar Romero, I think, absolutely kills it as the Joker. The only complaint that I ever had was that he refused to shave his mustache, and so he would just paint over it with the makeup, and that was bizarre. But his take on the Joker is actually, it kind of stands up today. Obviously it's in context and the material is different today, but the way that he portrays it, his actual physicality, that's not too far off than the best versions of the Joker we've ever had.
I think each Joker builds off of the next Joker. And
What are you, Grant Morrison?
I wish.
Well, yeah, that's fair.
No, I think almost all of them could be said to be great on their own.
Oh, Nicholson's Joker's great. That's not the Joker to me, but he's great in that movie.
In the same way that it's tough to say Burgess Meredith's version of the Penguin is the Penguin, it's tough to say Nicholson's Joker is the Joker. But with that Joker, then you get the Batman the Animated Series Joker, and then you get...
Which is
which then leads into, Heath Ledger's Joker.
And Heath Ledger's Joker's even weirder example. If it weren't for Heath Ledger being so good in that role, I think that would have been a complete failure of a Joker, because they tried to do the gritty...
You mean like Jared Leto's Joker?
See, and that's another sad thing, is because I think Jared Leto would make a great Joker, but what did he have to work with? He's the plastic surgeon who's working on Jack Nicholson's Joker. He's like, do you see the tools I have to work with?
He had the unenviable task of having to follow up with Heath Ledger.
100%,
so it had to be kind of that off-the-rails, vile slice of humanity.
That's the douchiest
It
Joker.
is.
Though. I mean, it's terrible. But I don't hate the casting. I mean, if you've seen some of the other weird stuff that Jared Leto's done, his other like method stuff, like Mr. Nobody, as much as that's a kind of a garbage movie, he's killer in that film. Like, it's really hard to deny his dedication to that role and to changing his personality. And
but there's also certain actors that you need to confine in their roles, that they need to be reeled in and set to a specific task. And he is the type of actor who can really bring some major performances, but in his Joker or like his House of Gucci, where it's just like, it's off the wall, too much cartoon, just doesn't work.
Every now and then you need a Nicholas Meyer telling William Shatner to calm the down. Yeah, and Margot Robbie is fantastic as Harley when she finally finds her footing and gets a decent movie behind her, at least a half-assed decent movie. Not even a good one, just something half-assed.
Yes. I don't think that movie is poor because of what she is bringing.
As an actor, she's a lot like Henry Cavill. Might be the perfect Harley Quinn, just doesn't have anything to work with, until the Suicide Squad, which I thought did a really good job of treating her character better.
Yes, or the Harley Quinn animated series, which is awesome.
True. But is that Margot
that's
Robbie?
Kaylee Cuoco.
Oh,
I don't know, maybe it's because the show's so good that it works.
And then I think some honorable mentions are probably Zazie Beetz as Domino.
Yes. Yeah.
Great cast.
Again, it's a character that's like, what character is there? So it's nice to inject a character into it.
With charisma and presence and a great actress, I think, an undersung, underrated actress. Chris Hemsworth's Thor, surprisingly great. When they first cast him, I was like, no way. And I think he kind of kills it.
Yeah. Again, it's a character that is allowed to grow and let the actor dictate where that character goes. Because he's obviously someone who's much better at blending the physicality with the comedy. And when you let that come together, something like Ragnarok is just
genius.
It's amazing.
So genius. It is. And it's funny because I remember when Helmsworth played George Kirk in Star Trek, in Abrams' Star Trek. I remember watching that film because that came out in 2009. I remember watching that and going, wow, I could see him playing Captain America. Like, wow, finally, somebody who could play Captain America. And then when they casted Chris Evans, I was kind of disappointed until I saw the movie. And then when Hemsworth comes out as Thor, I was like, oh, shit. Yeah, who else are you going to have play that? I mean,
yeah.
And I'm sure we already touched on Charlie Cox
Actually, we
Daredevil and all that. No, yeah, we talked about
We didn't talk anything about any of the TV, which I think is a...
I thought we talked about D'Onofrio. Oh, well, I've got to edit this in different order then, because D'Onofrio is maybe the greatest casting of any Marvel villain of all time. Maybe better than Ian McKellen. D'Onofrio is Kingpin. Who else can play that role? Screw Michael Clark Duncan, God rest his soul, but I mean, like...
For the role he was given in that film, I think he does an okay job, but D'Onofrio inhabits so much more. I mean, he's given so much more to work with. It helps that he looks so much like the character from the page.
It's insane. To me, he is Kingpin. And he even overacts a lot, but it's still like, oh my God.
I feel like he overacts in the right way. it feels fitting for the moment.
Yeah, he's supposed to look intimidating and larger than life, and he nails it, especially since he is like 6'7" and like 350 pounds. Yep, that's Kingpin. There you go.
I mean, again, with Marvel casting, Charlie Cox as Daredevil, John Barenthal as the Punisher.
How brilliant is that? So good. It's like now I can't imagine anyone else ever playing Punisher ever again, which is fine because what else did we have before that? And I love Tom J, and we all love, love Dolph Lundgren for our own reasons, but...
Yeah. No, Barenthal is the Punisher, and that's...
And that series is the most underrated of the Marvel
I would agree.
TV shows.
I mean, it's I've
so
rewatched
underrated.
that, and I've rewatched Daredevil. I haven't felt the need to rewatch any of the other ones.
Jessica Jones is still good. Oh, I guess we've forgotten about
David
Purple
Tennant?
Man. How good is he in that? He's a terrifying villain.
He is. But that's also a character that you can make your own because there isn't much on the page to work with. So,
I also liked Marshala Ali as was it Copperhead?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Great. I think the guy that got to play
Cage,
Power Man,
Power Man,
Luke Cage. Well, I mean, come
Mike
on.
Coulter, is that right?
Yeah, Michael Coulter. Yeah, I think he's great in that role. That show is hit and miss. The actors in it are so above and beyond. Like Marshala
Alfred
Ali,
Woodard.
Alfred Woodard as Black Mariah, and just absolutely nails it. It's such good casting. And those are such good casting that we kind of overlook the also good casting. Maybe not like home run cast. The guy that plays Foggy Nelson. He's great in that part, The guy that plays Ben Urich. In fact, almost all of Daredevil is just immaculately
There
cast.
isn't much of anything that I would do differently.
I mean, there was never a better fanboy moment for me. Well, I mean, there are some great fanboy moments.
Maybe.
I mean, not. I won't say no. One of my top 10
a fanboy
fanboy
moment that I really like.
Season 2 of Daredevil, which people don't like, which I don't understand because I think it does such a great job of introducing Punisher and how important that is, and how to juxtapose Punisher to Daredevil. When they do their old boy scene where Punisher is in prison and has to kill 50 guys that Kingpin sicks on him, still survives, and then Kingpin beats the living bejesus out of him easily. It just sets this perspective. Like, you understand how powerful Kingpin is. You understand how badass Punisher is. And then there's Kingpin. There's the reason he's Kingpin.
Yeah. That's one of the only things, it's one of the major things I disliked about, that's not even true. It is one thing I disliked about Hawkeye when Kate Bishop takes him on and she's kind of like pseudo holding around.
Yes. Yes. I mean, they try to prove that he can take a bigger hit than most people.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like I've seen this guy like punch a brick, and he's knocking this little 18-year-old girl around, and she's fine.
Yes, I thought that was kind of dumb too. I think that whole show was kind of a letdown. I mean, for Florence Pugh, that probably would have been real.
That's fine. It didn't really do what I wanted it to do, but that's not everything's for me,
right?
When
do I get what I want?
I think one of the casting, at least before we go, that I did want to touch on is a 2000s one that really nailed it. Tom Welling as young Clark Kent.
Interesting.
I really liked it. Again, a guy who doesn't really feel like he has really much charisma.
True.
But I also like that for a coming-of-age Clark Kent. He allows all the characters around him to kind of carry the story.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. And Michael Rosenbaum. I think the pairing of those two.
He's great. In fact, they tried to get Rosenbaum back for Crisis on Infinite Earths in the CW, but his scheduling was unavailable. And I would have loved to see him again as Lex Luthor. I think he's an underrated Luthor. I see what they're doing with
John Cryer.
Yeah, I see what they're doing with John Cryer, but
what are they doing with John Cryer?
He's Lex Luthor in the Arrowverse. He's Lex Luthor.
Okay.
Yeah, and I know why they're doing it. It's because of Superman 4. That's why Helen Slater shows up. That's why you see John Wesley Shipp as Jay Garrick. Also inspired. I'm sorry. Inspired casting.
They're calling back, They have a lot of access to a lot of these actors who don't really have a ton going on, but still hold a niche in a lot of geek hearts. It's an easy way to mine that.
Honestly, there's too much for us to list because there are so many great castings, and a lot of them are overlooked because either the movies were bad or there were so many other bad castings that it kind of like overshadows it. But there's a lot of little things that are really, really good in a lot of those movies. Maybe we should have broke this up into two halves, good ones and bad ones, because we could go on about David Hasselhoff and, Lisa Rinna as Contessa de Fontaine. That was Lisa Rinna played her in the David Hasselhoff S.H.I.E.L.D. movie.
I mean, they just did whatever they wanted. I mean, at that point in time, they didn't care about any of this.
Do you remember who wrote that movie?
It's not Goyer, is it? Oh,
it's David Goyer.
Yeah.
So David Goyer wrote the made-for-TV Nick Fury Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. with David Hasselhoff, and then Batman Begins, and then Man of Steel. Boy, this makes a lot of sense.
I mean, the ultimate up and down writer, a lot of properties in general.
Well, like Zach Penn and Simon Kinberg, too.
All right. Same year as Nick Fury Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., you get Dark City and Blade.
David Goyer wrote all three of those.
Are we just doing like on-air?
Yeah, I ran out of script a while ago, so
how about we just wrap this up?
Well, we'll wrap this up. So I know this was a chaotic one, but this is what chaos magic gets you. So please, Doctor Strange walks in. There's no such thing as chaos magic. Thanks for listening to us dick around on a microphone for God knows how long it's been.
For you guys, it's been, I don't know, an hour.
Maybe an hour. It's been like 7 hours for Jake and I. It's been the extended release of all 3 Lord of the Rings movies.
We've done the extended Zack Snyder cut of Justice League.
But we do this every Tuesday, so it doesn't matter. Yeah. But thank you guys for tolerating us. And don't forget to like and subscribe in wherever you get your pod. Please rate and review.
If you have any feedback for us, get in contact. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, The Moon.
Friendster,
Pony Express,
Zanga, MySpace. We implore you to support your local comic shops and retailers. This is an important thing that needs to be done today of all days. Not today, specifically today, but in the time in which we live. The time in which we live, it's important to support your comic shops and retailers. From Dispatch Ajax, we'd like to say Godspeed, fair wizards.
Remember, no matter where you go,